Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Full Force News Burst live special with me, Christopher McLeod AKA Diagnostic 80, brought to you by GeneralsJoesReborn.com. And joining me tonight is the man, the myth, the legend, Ryan Costello of Renegade Game Studios fame. Ryan, how are you doing, my good man? Thank you for joining me.
I'm doing good, Chris. It's weird that we're talking face to face. I feel like we've been in the same online circles for decades. And this is our first time really having a conversation like this.
It's crazy, isn't it? It feels a bit bonkers, actually. And what is funny is we've commented and chatted and messaged so many times anyway. It doesn't feel like this is the first time. I think one of the things is you probably see my face quite a lot on here, and I see yours when on like all the Renegade Game Studios virtual cons and all that kind of stuff. So it's quite interesting. Also a little bit mind bendy.
We have two parasocial relationships kind of overlapping.
Yeah, like a Venn diagram.
Yeah.
So it's what's happening, but it's just two circles over the top of each other. Anyway, right, we've got loads of cool stuff to get into today. We're talking role-playing games, with obviously G.I. Joe related. We're talking Gen Con, we're talking crossover events, we're talking all sorts of cool stuff, characters, artwork. Oh, and we've got exclusives as well, may I add. So we've got some exclusive art to show you guys. Hope everyone's doing well in the chat as well. We've got Josh, we've got Pass at the moment and saying hello. Hello, guys. Let's get stuck in. But I suppose the first thing we really need to focus on, Ryan, is yourself, bud. I mean, for those that don't know you, do you want to kind of give us a little background about what you do and where you came from?
Sure. There may be some people that know me and don't know they know me. If they were on the Joe Customs or Joe Canuck message board over the last 20 years, basically since the late 90s, I'm Scramble. I was a moderator on both of those message boards, and I helped run the Canadian G.I. Joe convention. But since then, I've become best known as one of the authors of the G.I. Joe role-playing game core rulebook, one of the designers of the Essence 20 system from Renegade Game Studios, and someone who has worked on over a dozen Essence 20 products and written close to 500,000 words for this game.
I haven't written 500,000 words in my life. I might not have said that many. Actually,
it's
that's not true.
Been a busy 4 years.
That's impressive work. That is impressive work. And of course, we'll be kind of getting into some of that in the show today as well with images. Have no fear, people. We'll be looking at lots of cool stuff on this one. Now, for those of you in the chat and kind of watching at home, if you have any questions for Ryan, as long as they're appropriate, of course, throw them in there and we'll kind of I'll incorporate them as and when I can throughout the show. Right then, I suppose then, Ryan, we might as well get stuck. Now that we've talked about you, we should get stuck into the actual, the nitty gritty of Renegade Game Studios and what have you. And we'll start with a little chat about that. I couldn't resist an explosion. Just to transition.
It wouldn't be the full force without it.
Would it at all? Right. So Renegade Game Studios, for those that aren't completely aware, I'm not sure if that would be the case here, but there might be a few people in here. Could you give us a little kind of rundown on Renegade Game Studios, please?
Sure. So for the last 10 years or so, I think maybe they're on their 11th year now, Renegade Game Studios has been publishing mostly board games, but also has been in the tabletop role-playing game space. And they've become, I would say, top 5. Like, you've got the really big players like Wizards of the Coast and Paizo, and then right below them you've got people like Renegade Game Studios, and they've had a lot of success recently with licenses that you wonder why they are licenses. So like they have the license to Vampire the Masquerade, a very famous role-playing game put out by another role-playing game publisher that is now more interested in like licensing adaptations of their role-playing game. So Renegade has the license to that. And of course, Wizards of the Coast is owned by Hasbro, versus the other way around. In any case, the biggest publisher of role-playing games owns G.I. Joe. You would think that this would be a Wizards of the Coast product. Right. But no, Renegade somehow managed to get this license to this, Power Rangers, Transformers, My Little Pony. So yeah, Renegade, as far as I know, the owners are magicians when it comes to convincing people to give them the license that you would not expect. And like they've moved beyond just the G.I. Joe the Hasbro intellectual properties. They are doing Robo Rally now. They're doing Diplomacy. They're doing Axis and Allies.
Axis and Allies, yeah.
Board games that, again, a publisher like Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, you'd think they'd be doing it themselves. But it's one of those things where it's just the size of the fish and the size of the pond makes more sense for Wizards of the Coast to license these games out and license these properties out to another company that this would be the biggest thing in their catalog.
Right.
Whereas it would be just something that's almost bothering the other people that are at Hasbro that want to focus on the bigger things that they could be doing with these brands.
I think that's a good point, actually. The fact that it didn't really dawn on me for a second there as to what, but there's only so much stuff you can do. No matter how big a company you are, there's only so many things you can really focus on and, churn out. And yeah, I think it's pushing it a little bit even for Hasbro to be taking on all of those as well, and rather than just, like you say, licensing them out. And maybe they've done the costing and gone, hey, this makes more sense to license out than do it.
We can make millions of dollars with this movie, or tens of thousands of dollars with this game. You just know that that's tens of thousands of dollars is worth a lot more to a smaller company.
Exactly. And to be fair, Renegade Game Studios do an amazing job with this stuff. I mean, I have multiple Renegade Game Studios products very close to me right now. It feels like this turned into like a one of those like 24-hour TV selling
infomercial,
like QVC kind of thing or whatever it was. But yeah, I've got Mission Critical there. I've got the first Mission Critical, the deck building game. What else? The expansion packs, a number of expansion packs. Quite a lot. The only thing I've managed to even attempting to play was the deck building game, which was absolutely awesome. And I just found it so much fun just going through all the cards, honestly. The artwork to this, that's another aspect of this company. The amount of artwork that really, that's something that really I enjoy a lot when it comes to the Renegade reveals, seeing all of the new artwork for things. It's so cool.
Yeah, and it's fun having a mix of people like me who are really into the property, and then some people that are just like Googling the property to learning about it, and they'll like glom onto a character that maybe the fandom has kind of forgotten, but there was just something about their design that clicked with them. And now you've got A-list characters or like really popular with fans characters mixed in with like there's the 40th anniversary. The Pursuit of Cobra Recondo is one of the pieces of art that's in the core rulebook, and it's like nobody remembers that one. But it's a great piece and it looks good.
Yeah, that was a brilliant figure, actually. Kind of like if Psych Out had a child with
Jesse the Body Ventura.
Yeah, Jesse Ventura. I was trying to think of Blaine was the word I was trying to. Yes. Blaine had a child with Psych Out. That's what you get. Recondo, Pursuit of Cobra. But no, that's amazing. And one of the things I love about all of this is I definitely can see you as a fan, particularly. I can definitely see your DNA all over this, for lack of a better term. But I can definitely see where you've definitely probably had some kind of like, hey, we should probably drop this in, or have you tried, with maybe utilizing this? And obviously your literal work is in all of the writing and everything, but you can almost see it visually showing up as well.
Yeah. Well, I remember when you were talking about the Sergeant Slaughter box set, and you mentioned that Overlord was going to be the villain of the adventure, and Pat was like, oh, I wonder if that's because of those early 90s commercials with Overlord and Sergeant Slaughter. I was sitting there like, that is exactly why Overlord is the villain in this.
This is why I do this. Yeah. Is it nice to hear? It's like, because Pat and I do a lot of talking about the Renegade Game Studios stuff, because we do, whenever there's reveals, we like to talk about it. We like to look at the art and break that down. We like to look at the stuff that we can, the stuff that we can actually kind of not relate to, but we have the time to kind of, enjoy and that kind of stuff. That aspect of it is one of the things that we absolutely love. And it must be, do you get a real high as well, not just from the Sergeant Overlord stuff, but hearing us maybe coming up with ideas as to why that's been incorporated or why that's been incorporated?
Yeah. So you know what? I actually really love the full spectrum of reactions to the books, because there's stuff like you guys who are really into the fandom and you're really picking up on the subtle things that I'm dropping. Right. But then also when I'm on the Renegade Discord and people are talking about how they got into Essence 20 because of Power Rangers or Transformers, and all the Essence 20 games are like cross-compatible. So some of them just pick up the G.I. Joe books just for the options to add to their other game. That's then they get into G.I. Joe through the role-playing game. And they're basically getting into G.I. Joe through my eyes. And it's so cool seeing the things that they're attached to. And it's like, yes, that's some little part of this, the lore that I really cling to. And now somebody else gets why I like it so much, because I've just like filtered my enthusiasm onto the page.
And and you can definitely sense that. Like, it's not even a question. Like, every time Pat and I talk about this stuff, it's like, well, that's Ryan. Clearly, that's Ryan. No one's putting that in. That's Ryan mentioning that.
Actually, I just want to give Renegade like thanks and a lot of credit that like I'm not a Renegade employee. I've been doing this all as a freelancer.
Yeah,
and it is wild how much influence I have over the direction of the line, just what the books are going to be about, the art that we're going to use, like that they recognize in me someone that has a good grasp of the fandom, grasp of the lore, and grasp of the commercial needs of these product lines. And so they gave me a lot of power for someone that is not technically an employee.
I'm telling you now as well, like you can see what the quality of it comes out as well because of that. Because you've got that knowledge base, because you know the quirks, the ins and outs of the character, kind of, personality traits and all that kind of stuff. You know all of that stuff. You know how to write it as well. So it's something that definitely comes out very clearly. Even from like I said, from that kind of surface level visual, like, it's definitely seen. And I would say at least from my perspective, and I know Pat as well, and the rest of the team, like, it's very appreciated, honestly. Loads of people saying some really nice things in the chat as well that I've been ignoring. Sorry. JDO says this is an amazing interview. Well, thank you, JDO. We're awesome.
Just getting started.
Yeah, I know we scratched the surface yet. What we get? Chris has said. Chris G says, here's a good question: will Renegade ever put a character source book for G.I. Joe?
So this goes back to me not actually being a Renegade employee. I cannot say what plans are beyond what's been announced. I know some stuff that I will not talk about, and I know that is one of the things that's been requested quite a bit. Actually, that was the biggest surprise when the core rulebook came out. So we have this chapter at the beginning that's called the active roster, and it's just the bio of 81 Joes. Because I forgot Wild Bill, and after I picked my 80, I was like, I can't leave out Wild Bill, but I can't cut anybody. So I narrowed G.I. Joe down to 81 characters. And I thought just having a bio of who these characters are, like a little background, would be enough, because I saw people just interacting with them as talking heads around the base and on other missions, but that the players would be the ones that are actually doing the things on the missions. And so there's stats for Cobras, because you would have to fight against Cobra, but there was minimal stats for G.I. Joe in the core rulebook. And so many people's reaction was like, where are the stats for the Joes? And so it's heard. That's where the contact system came in. So we're getting kind of ahead of ourselves, but there is a mechanic in the game where it's almost like getting a cameo appearance by an established character, and these are the contacts. So if you are allied with them or they're on the site, you could be like, mainframe, you're a computer guy, so you have one of 3 computer-based abilities, or probably 2 computer-based abilities and 1 because he's a Marine. Just to, really make it specific to mainframe.
See, that also, you just saying that highlights the knowledge of a character, because I don't think many people would be picking up on that aspect if they were just looking at the character as is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. And I do try and make sure that whenever we're doing something mechanical as in like rules based, I try and have you definitely have to lead with what they're known for. And then you have to find the hook that Larry Hama is really good at fitting into the file cards.
Yeah.
And make sure that that's represented somewhere in the mechanics.
So you're saying that Beachhead has some sort of active, smelly, lack of deodorant sort of...
Beachhead refusing to wear deodorant is referenced at some point in a product. I don't think the product's out yet, so we cannot go into any further detail.
Brilliant. There's an exclusive, guys. Chris G, thanks for the comment, the question, bud. Really appreciate it. This is what everyone wants to know. This is the only thing that anyone wants to know, including myself and everyone in the universe. Will Tripwire's new robot, McLeod, make an appearance in a rule book?
So that's actually tricky because Tripwire is in the Cobra Codex. He's one of the Joes, the name Joes that shows up in the adventure. And that was based on, the classic version of Tripwire.
Right.
And so Tripwire specifically, we would have to find some excuse to revisit him to use his new elements that have been added. But I can say that we are allowed to use classified stuff. So our license is for the Evergreen G.I. Joe, which means that all of the original Re-American Hero, Valor vs. Venom, Spy Troops, that era, G.I. Joe vs. Cobra, and classified are all under that umbrella that we can use. So the thing we can't use is stuff that's clearly splintered off. So we can't touch the movie, can't touch Sigma 6, we can't touch G.I. Joe Extreme. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, we have the G.I. Joe Evergreen license.
Interesting. Well, that's really cool. That's actually good information to know, actually. David says Renegade Game Studios has been doing a great job on G.I. Joe and Transformers. I have never missed a drop. I love them. Thank you, David. It's crazy how having love for a brand can produce quality stuff, says Pastor Progry, and that's like clearly what's happening here as well.
So I do want to also say I have a writing degree, and I have spent about 10 years as a professional writer. So and like really getting into the game industry. So it is cool to think that I'm just a fan who walked off on the street and said, like, this is how we're going to handle this. But I have years of like writing articles for fan sites for no money, just because of a love of G.I. Joe and a love of getting the message out there that they recognize in me, both a professional and a fan.
What's it like getting paid for it now then?
Oh, it's wonderful.
That feels great, doesn't it?
I basically have 2 full-time jobs. One is my day job as a writer, and then I come home and I work on Essence 20 stuff.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like it. It just feels like an extension of my hobby. Awesome.
It was also really, really cool to see that Justin Bell getting involved as well a little while back with it was the kind of winter operations story.
Operation Cold Iron. It was our published adventure book. And I brought Justin in. When we were putting together a team, I was like, Justin is a great author. Like, he is definitely on the professional side. He doesn't know game design as well. So he and I will work together on that side of his chunk, but he'll have the creative drive of his section, part 3. And I'll just be like his mechanical assistant.
Fantastic.
And it was fun to work with Justin. And it was like, that was my way of paying him back for all of the reviews he was doing during the New Sculpt era, when I wasn't really buying Joes, most of which weren't even available in my area. So I was kind of collecting through his reviews and just knowing that if there was something I should put all the extra effort into to track down, Justin was the one that would tell me that.
That's awesome. And it's just nice again, like to having someone else who is knowledgeable, talented, etc., on that as well. And thanks for getting him in. That's awesome. Right then, let's quickly move on. We'll get back to some of your questions in a second, guys, but also let's get stuck into what we're here to talk about today. So we'll start, of course, with the original G.I. Joe role-playing game. We kind of mentioned it a little bit in the chat a second ago, but again, this is kind of what kicked it off for RPG with G.I. Joe, wasn't it, for Renegade Game Studios? Yeah,
exactly. For years, I know people that are, hey, Ben's in the chat. Hey, Ben's my producer at Renegade.
Oh, nice. He's just checking out. He's just making sure.
He's the one that provided the exclusive art. He made that happen. So,
thank you, Ben. I don't know I'm yelling. Like like he can hear me if I yell it. Thank you, Ben. Anyway, carry on.
Here we have the 2021 release of the G.I. Joe role-playing game core rulebook. Originally, this was supposed to be a 2020 release, and it was supposed to use the Dungeons & Dragons engine. But then at some point during the development, so first of all, COVID happened, and like it just slowed down all production, and it gave us a chance to reassess, like, is this the best fit? And it was decided, no, we need an original system that really plays up what makes these action adventure brands that we've got like fun and fast. And we want it to be a nice light role-playing game, so that odds are you're coming to it from Dungeons & Dragons or this is your first role-playing game. We want either way for it to be a nice entryway into role-playing games as a hobby. But then if you're really into these brands, that'll help you understand a little bit more complex mechanics, because you're buying in and you've got like contextual understanding, and that helps you understand the rules, and eventually things will fall into play. So yeah, the core rulebook, we tried to summarize G.I. Joe as a whole, like as a brand, because, and this is something I've gotten into arguments with people about, but G.I. Joe is a toy line that everything else is an adaptation of. So when I knew that we had the G.I. Joe license, I didn't want to just do a version of the Sunbow G.I. Joe or just the Marvel G.I. Joe. I wanted everything. I wanted Blackout in there, Blackout and the Stahl siblings, and have that like in there, and just pepper it with references to the entire history of the G.I. Joe line that we had access to. And including, I snuck Sergeant Stone in there. I should not have. I did not have the right to, but because he was kind of a touch point of multiple, like there is a Stone in the movie, there's a Stone in Sigma 6, there's a Stone in Extreme. Yeah. And I was like, oh, he's Extreme, right? He's not Sergeant Savage. That's a bit of my blind spot. But yeah, so I just wanted that one character to represent everything we weren't technically allowed to use.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, but
now you've given it away. You've given it away now. So
every now and then I push the limits, and I know I shouldn't, but I do it for good reasons.
Yeah, totally. And also it gets the people that are enjoying it more because they're seeing these characters kind of come out. And like one of the things I love about Renegade Game Studios and all of like we've been talking about in the past is the fact that you can literally where's Waldo everything. Like you can literally find characters that you. I was doing it with the images you were sending me today. I was kind of like, hello, there's one, there's another one, there's another cheeky one in there. So yeah, I think that's one of the things I get most of my enjoyment from, is seeing some of these obscure, deep cut, often forgotten characters. It's wicked. And also I really like when you guys first dropped and you were doing a lot of classified design kind of interpretations. That was something that excited me, because all of a sudden it was like, wow, we've got some media to back up the classified series at that time.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of that was because we had access to all these assets, so it meant we could populate the books with art for a fraction of the cost. But then because we'd established that these are the looks we're going for, original pieces like the cover needed to use those for consistency's sake. Yeah, that like this might be the first art of that version of the Cobra Troopers, because they were just announced at the time that it came out.
Yeah,
and we've got the Cobra Commander in that regal blue that's kind of been moved away from, so it's just a fun moment in time that were captured there.
Yeah,
but mixed in with the Rattler, which was nowhere near the classified lines at the time.
Called it.
Yeah, there we go. This was our way of hinting that just wait 4 years, there will be a classified Rattler.
Classified mountain and like pine trees diorama coming soon and confirmed, clearly, right?
That's right. And
that's all that's left.
Fun fact is that the Snake Eyes has a flaming sword, because at one point he was supposed to have a flaming sword in the movie.
Yeah.
And that got cut, but nobody told our artists. And so when they were looking through the art documents, they added that to the art order, because I didn't have anything to do with the writing of this art order. Not that I'm not distancing myself from this. I think this is a really cool cover.
Yeah, totally.
I'm just saying I can take no credit for it.
No, I get what you're saying, bud. But that's totally true. And in fact, I was going to mention that. I was going to say, does the sword on fire because of the movie? But yeah,
it is. And technically, you can use the rules in the book to give Snake Eyes a flaming sword, or to give your character a flaming sword.
That is pretty dope, actually. I'm not going to lie.
So the equipment chapter, I wanted to make sure that no matter what, any existing accessory, except for maybe some really specific ones, could be made, right down to Ashiko's motorcycle armor. That is technically something that if you put a lot of effort into it, you can make using the rules in the core rulebook.
That's crazy. That I did actually find one of those eventually. It did cost me a little bit, but that was a difficult one to get hold of back in the day.
So they got liquidated in Canada. And so that was one of the easier ones for me. And
well done.
I mean, I couldn't get baseline G.I. Joe versus Cobra figures, but I could get this canceled rare item.
Yeah, just random, really difficult, rare, hard to find figures. That's amazing. David mentioned the Atkins brothers had done an awesome job. Yeah, they've done quite a lot. They've done a decent amount of the art, haven't they? Brian.
Yeah, it's often Robert does the start, and then I forget his brother's first
name.
Brian, yeah, and then Brian will do the finishing and the coloring. And it makes a good team.
Bratkins and Ratkins, as I like to call them. Anyway, amazing stuff. Justin Bella's a great writer. Is he? He's all right.
Well, he's a great guy. True. And he's a writer.
Yeah, exactly. He also is a writer. No, I'm kidding. Justin's amazing. The best thing with an RPG is Cool Breeze doesn't have to die, says Pastor Pierogi.
I have a friend who used to live on Cool Breeze Boulevard, and every time I drove down it, I was like,
crying. Never forget you, man. Never forget you. Brilliant. Chris G says there's a lot of deep cuts. Some characters I forgot were important at one time. That is a good point, actually, because there is an element sometimes of forgetting characters that were really significant at that moment in time, like either in the toy line, in a cartoon, an animated series, in whatever it may be. There's so many moments like that where you just like, oh yeah, of course that exists. So again, that always helps when you've got people that love this brand involved.
Going back to Overlord, if you read his file card, he was supposed to unite the Iron Grenadiers, the Serpentor faction, the Cobra Commander faction, and then he never shows up in any media other than those commercials.
Nothing. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was like 15 years before he showed up in a comic.
I love those concept pieces. Well, not concept, but the original kind of like presentation art where you've got one in blue, which is kind of like, the hint that it was going to be a Cobra Commander kind of thing.
I think it's even labeled in the art that this is Cobra Commander.
I think you're right, isn't it? Yeah. And then, but again, in fact, I've got Dan's book here somewhere.
I use Dan's books no matter what. Anytime that I'm doing it, I bust these out. Actually, so this is funny. Dan at one point upgraded his website so that you could just click and see the table of contents instead of just a list of the names of what's in each book.
Right.
I would go onto the content page with all the lists and just search the text. And when he turned it into a graphic, I could no longer do that to know quickly what character was in what book. So I reached out to Dan and was like, "Can you change it back?" And he did, and he changed it back basically just for me.
That's awesome. I hung out with Dan recently. He was out this way. Yeah, it was cool. Anyway, enough of Dan. Shout out to Dan K though and his books. Same goes to Carson as well and Brian Hickey. I feel like I'm constantly either in the omnibus looking for art kind of references and stuff. I'm in Dan's books looking for concepts and kind of pre-production information, and I'm in the Total Action Force books just getting information about the Action Force brand and stuff like that. So thank you to all of those people who are making amazing, wonderful, licensed books, by the way. Ryan, what is going on? So many amazing licensed properties out there, including yourself and Renegade Game Studios.
Hasbro's being really smart with who it's licensing out to, because we've got some really quality books out there now.
Big time. Now, role-playing game kind of mechanics. Could you take us through a very basic sort of brief rundown of how it works in its kind of simplest kind of core?
Yes. So the Essence 20 system gets its name because you have your 4 essences of your character. The 4 S's: your strength, speed, smarts, and social. And everything is resolved.
I just have the one. I just have social.
Social, but that'll get you pretty far. And everything is resolved using a D20 and possibly another die. So when you're building your character, you decide what areas they're strong in. So let's say you're building a Wild Bill, you would have him driving. You would up his driving skill. And what improving a skill does is it increases the other die you roll with the D20. So if you need to do like a crazy maneuver in your helicopter and you need to hit a target number of 15, we'll say, you roll the D20 and then you'll add another die, which could be, if you're doing Wild Bill, you'll probably have it really high, like a D12. And then that's it. You roll those 2 dice, you add those 2 numbers together, and you're trying to hit your target number. So it's actually incredibly fast and incredibly satisfying. One of the problems that slows down a lot of role-playing games is that instead of it being a set number, it'll be you get a couple of pluses here and a couple of pluses here, and then you've just got this like addition pasta where you've got so many little things that you got to add up, and you'll want to do it 2-3 times just to make sure that you're getting everything right, and you won't be forgetting any aspect of it. Whereas with us, it's really just the 2 die, you're adding it together. Really just, if you can add any 2 numbers together, then you're good to go.
Oh, thank God.
And something that happens in a lot of other role-playing games for some reason is that they'll have how combat works and then they'll have how everything else works.
Right.
And for us, combat is skills that are tied into your character. So your might is what you would use for melee combat. Your targeting is what you would use for ranged combat. It all works exactly the same way. So it is a quick, intuitive system that also gives you a lot of room to customize your character to your liking. And then bonuses are what we call upshifts, where let's say your skill die is a D6. You could get, and like conditions are in your favor, then you could get that bumped up to a D8. So that's just sometimes an option, a character creation, like a character customization option will say you always get these upshifts in these situations. Sometimes your game master, the storyteller, will say, you know what, just given the circumstances, I'm going to give you this upshift or a downshift if things are working against you.
Which is usually what I get. Can I say, every time I've played any tabletop game, I have the worst die kind of like every single time. It's just, I need anything over a 3 would be great right now. Oh, okay, 2 1, Snake Eyes every time. It's quite unbelievable.
You're such a G.I. Joe fan, you have to roll Snake Eyes.
I know. It's like I've literally conditioned myself to only throw Snake Eyes each time.
2 quick anecdotes. If this was the G.I. Joe Monopoly, that would be good because that means you can move to anywhere on the board.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was one of the special rules.
I have that, and I've never opened it. It's still in its plastic kind of seal. The G.I. Joe.
It's okay Monopoly. As far as like a G.I. Joe specific thing. The other anecdote I was going to say is my friend Jeff Chapman has you beat. He is notoriously the worst roller to the point that one time he was using Google's dice rolling software, and he accidentally wrote a D200 instead of a D20, and he still missed. He could have had anything between 1 and 200. He needed to get like a 15, and he rolled like a 5.
That is actually really, really talented right there. Not
My
only
favorite
has he managed
reaction
to take that magic into his physical self, he's also managed to transfer it into the digital world as well. That is impressive.
Yeah, my friend Param is like, I am not superstitious at all, but Jeff is not allowed to touch my dice.
I got Jeff on it. Oh, no, I can't use it now. Ryan Daly says, I got that cool rule book. Haven't played yet, but it was a blast to read through. I mean, that must make you feel good.
It does. And that was one of the goals. I saw it as this is a collector's piece. We want to make sure that even if you never get to play, which statistically, there's a good chance people buy rule books and then they never actually get them to the table, or they'll play a couple of times and then never again. So I still wanted it to be something that was a joy to own. And it's one of the reasons I argued that we should include Cobra Commander in the book, because one of the arguments from one of the producers was that once you give something stats, people will believe they should kill it. And there's some characters that you should just not give stats to so that they can never kill them. Cobra Commander should just be a looming threat over the game the whole time. And I was like, no, people that are fans of Cobra Commander, excuse me, want to read our stats, see how we took his lore and turned it into rules. And so they let us do the G.I. Joe book that way, whereas with Power Rangers, they left out some of the big villains. And Power Rangers came out before G.I. Joe. And one of the first reactions was, what do you mean you don't have stats for Rita? You don't have stats for Lord Zed? Like, where are the big villains? I wanted to see how you'd stat them out. So that was like, it was satisfying to know that I made the right call there, and that, you know, they put faith in me when I earned it in that case.
Yeah, Maltese Falcon is saying, I'd hate to see the size of Jeff's dice jail. Yeah, I probably.
Jeff is his own dice jail.
Yeah, he's created him. He's manifested into a dice jail. Anyway, yeah, let's move through with the role playing game. Now there are other kind of books out there as well, aren't there, Ryan, as well?
Yeah, whenever you make a role playing game, you don't want. Well, okay, let me take that statement back. Ideally, when you're adapting a property into a role-playing game, you want it to be a role-playing game line. There are some properties that will be small enough that you can do a one-and-done product, and you're like, I'm happy, and you could sell it to them saying like, hey, if you're a fan of this property, even just a little bit, good news, this is the entire role-playing game right here. Right. We didn't want to do that with G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe we knew was way too big to contain into a single book. So even when we were writing the G.I. Joe core rulebook, we were told, and you're going to have a Cobra-centric book next. And shortly thereafter, we got the Sergeant Slaughter license. Yes. So we were able to do a whole box set dedicated to him. And we were told, like, this is probably our only time that we can do anything with Sergeant Slaughter, because once this license runs out, we can't produce anything. So don't, like, put a little Sergeant Slaughter here and there while we have the rights, because then all those books have to be off the shelf. Put everything Sergeant Slaughter into a single box set that has an adventure, options, a miniature, cardboard miniature, like everything Sergeant Slaughter possible went into that one box.
Yeah.
And then after that initial, like, we know we want Cobra, we know we've got the opportunity for Sergeant Slaughter, they asked me, what do I want to do next? And I said, how about Factions in Action? This book that will contain all of the sub-teams, all of the splinter factions, because even just looking at the first couple of years of G.I. Joe, you've got G.I. Joe, you've got Cobra, you've got Extensive Enterprises and the Crimson Guard, you've got the Dreadnoks. Within a couple of years, you start getting the repaint teams like Tiger Force and Python Patrol. And we could even treat like the original 13 as its own faction. And so if you've ever looked at the core rulebook and wondered why so few of the original 13 are there, I was kind of holding them back so that we could do like dedicated original 13 time.
That's cool.
So so Factions in Action got added to the schedule, or like a to be added to the schedule list. But then Renegade came back to me and they were like, we've got this logistics puzzle for you. We need to get a book to the printer by this date. It needs to be this size. What do you want to do? And so at that point, it was suggested, what if we broke up Factions in Action into a series of books? And this was just a couple of them because it was intended to be a smaller book. And I was like, oh, wait a second. So because we're crunched for time, if we do Tiger Force and Python Patrol, then we could save a lot of time and money on art by just taking existing pieces of art and repainting them. And not only is that logistically what we want, that's like an homage to what Hasbro did to begin with. Like,
exactly. This is, literally hidden homage. I love it.
Exactly. Like our money and time saving trick is also the best possible way to do this book. So
That's
yeah,
amazing.
so what was also great is that it freed up our art budget for original pieces for more obscure characters, because like it was also great that Tiger Force has Duke, Roadblock, Flint, all characters that we had a lot of art of already.
Yeah.
So we could repurpose that. And then we could do original art for Big Brawler and Sky Striker, who we renamed Sky Saber, which was me being really bold, but saying like Sky Striker is a bad name because it's the name of one of the most famous pilots. And he's the only original character in Tiger Force. And yet his name has nothing to do with tigers. It's not like when Sabretooth was the only original member of Tiger Force, because he's the most tiger guy in Tiger Force. That makes sense. So a saber kind of references back to Sabretooth. So what if we rename him Sky Saber? And Hasbro was like, sure, whatever. Nobody cares about Sky Striker.
I feel like Hasbro just not paying attention at this point now. It's just like, yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really obscure art in there. There's one piece where it's Pythona and the Cobra La Royal Guards are like hanging overhead, about to ambush Mega Marines Gung Ho and Dino Hunters Ambush and Anti-Venom Barricade.
Nice.
I know. And it's because we saved so much money on the Tiger Force art, we were able to do this for what ended up being like the finishing touches for this book, which was a bunch of stuff that wouldn't have made it into the original Factions in Action, because we wouldn't have had space for we don't have space for Anti-Venom faction.
Right.
But because this needed to be small but thematic, and we had Tiger Force and Python Patrol, Ferocious Fighters became like, okay, so anything that is animal related, anything that is mutant related, that all fits this theme. So we got a bunch of really cool factions out there. My opinion, really cool factions, really cool obscure parts of G.I. Joe. We got to put stat up dinosaurs, and that's great because dinosaurs, they were on the cartoon.
Yeah.
They show up in the toy line, and they're useful to Power Rangers and Transformers people as well, which makes it that much more of a selling point for this book. So yeah, so Ferocious Fighters was one of the first books that I was really like, you need to give us an outline that fits these really tight parameters, and it really made something really cool.
That's brilliant. That's awesome. I love the cover on this one as well. So
this is the first cover that I got to sketch out. I don't have the sketch here, but we do have a sketch for another one later.
That's a beauty.
One of my rules is there's always a better choice than Duke. And that's why Flint is on the cover here, because like Duke gets so much play, and there's just so many more interesting characters than Duke, in my opinion. And Flint is a guy that I grew up a big fan of. I love Bill Ratner's performance of him on the animated series. And funny enough, that's his animated series look. That's not his Tiger Force or his original figure look.
Yeah.
Which wasn't my call. I said the black and white sketch, and that's just the colors that they decided to go with for these characters.
You know, they Googled Flint and got the Sunbow character model, though, which again, it's a banging model. And I do like that color scheme. It's a really nice color scheme on Flint. But yeah, beautiful. Lovely stuff. Is that Jay or Jinx?
That is Jinx.
Because I wasn't sure if it was a situation where there was like, you know, where you'd kind of had Flint in his regular gear, right? And then you'd put Lady J with him and put her in Tiger Force. But obviously, yeah, that's I figured.
If you look at her weapon, it's a little obscured by the title, but it is her.
Just about see the elaborate prongs on the end. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but funny enough, inside I wanted one new member of Tiger Force and Python Patrol in the art, or newer. So we have Quartermaster and his Python Patrol colors, and we did a Lady J Canary Anne homage.
Oh, that's genius.
Yeah, so we have her with her jump pack. It's just another piece of Lady J art we had, and it's like, well, if we just give her a yellow top and just put some stripes on it, it's both Canary Anne and it's Tiger Force Lady J.
Love it. Bloody love it. That's brilliant. Right, Ferocious Fighters, that's in the bag. Now, also, I wanted to talk to you about Quartermaster's Guide as well to Gear, because this is another one of those things where the cover really shows some deep cuts on this one. I mean, Mirage, that's inspired.
Not only front and center, the only recognizable character on the cover is 1992's Mirage, Mega Marine, obscure character.
Yep. I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, I'm down for this. And we were talking beforehand, of course, and I was kind of saying, this has got your DNA all over it, sort of thing. But you actually told me it wasn't technically yours to credit on this one, but still.
I have a weird relationship with this book in that I did the outline and I decided what all the content would be. But then I didn't have time to write on it, so I went to a bunch of our freelancers. And then afterwards, they brought me in. So I have a credit, G.I. Joe consultant, which I want to get on a business card. So yeah, I did like front end and back end editing work on this, but not any of the actual writing, except for some stuff that needed a little development. So like, anyway, I don't need to get into that. So yeah, so I didn't do the art order for the cover, but there were 2 different art orders that were proposed, and I saw this in the back end where we coordinate some things. One of which was a bunch of generic characters that looked like they could fit into the G.I. Joe world, and I was strongly against this. I was like, we have the rights to use actual G.I. Joe characters, and I know that I've bought comics just because there's one panel with Backstop in it, and Backstop's my boy as a Montrealer. And so, like, I know the power of just an obscure reference to a character that never gets any love and how much the fandom can react to that. So we shouldn't have this cover that has a bunch of, like, nobodies, basically, like characters that you could ascribe meaning to, but they are not from any point of the lore.
Right.
Whereas Mirage, who was the one on the other proposed artwork, every time people talk about the Quartermaster's Guide to Gear within the G.I. Joe fandom, that's the reaction they get. It's like, Mirage? Mirage is on the cover? But one, like, Mirage looks like a G.I. Joe. Like, even if he's from a point in the line where a lot of the designs start to get a little bit wacky and superhero-ish, Mirage still has a very military feel to him. He fits right in. Like, you can see we call it the Eagle Hawk. It's the updated name for the Tomahawk.
Love it.
Is right over his shoulder, an iconic vehicle, well remembered because it's heavily used in the G.I. Joe animated movie.
Yeah.
And it's all right there, and he's surrounded then by the Rams and the Steel Marauder mechs. Yeah,
freaking mechs. Oh, that was such a good little addition. And also, like, you know, you got the Dragonfly in the top right, you got the blooming armadillos, you got blooming Havocs in there. All the best, in my opinion. And also, there's that little cheeky section that looks like some sort of experimentation zone or something, right? With a Cobra Pogo in there and a Buzzball. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves the Buzzball, but people make fun of the Pogo. But I think they're both equally iconic.
Oh, they're 100%.
Now, the majority of these are in the book, and the reason it's kind of like all over the place is that we wanted to have all of the iconic vehicles in the core rulebook. Plus, we had some mechanical needs. Like, we needed single-person land vehicle, single-person air vehicle, single-person sea vehicle, and then multi-person land, sea, and air, plus iconic. So most of the most recognizable vehicles from the early days of G.I. Joe are in there. So populating the Quartermaster's Guide to Gear, which is supposed to be an all-equipment book, when we got the most iconic stuff and can create any weapon in the core rulebook, it was challenging. So that's why we kind of went a little far afield. Havoc was an easy choice because it's recognizable, but didn't make the cut in the core rulebook. Same thing for the Eagle Hawk. And then the mechs was like, you know what? Mechs have been a part of G.I. Joe for the last 10, 15 years. Like, every line has added mechs to it. And so if that's when you got into G.I. Joe and mechs are synonymous to you. And so that's how they got in there. Similarly, we have a whole chapter on nanomites and nanomite infusion powers. And that's because, again, ever since the Devil's Due relaunch of the comics, nanomites have played a major role in multiple iterations of G.I. Joe.
Even led into Rise of Cobra, didn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. So depending on when you got into G.I. Joe, these things could be the most important thing to you. Just like Mirage might be your favorite character. Just because, that's the character that you got in 92 or 92, or in that revival where for whatever reason they just kept making Mirage figures.
I know, it was like, let's do another Mirage. Okay. Let's do a transparent one. Check.
Yeah. The last one was green. What if this one's also green? Just differently green.
Just a different green. I have to say that I'm a real mark, it has to be said, for seeing a like a obscure character appear just randomly on stuff, like in the comic, in these kind of things, and a TV series, whatever it may be. I'm all about that. And so this sang to me, this source book, just out of interest, Ryan, and I'm not sure if you've actually been able to quantify this or anything, but how long does it take you to write an entire source book like this? I know it's not always you working on all of it, but
I did all of Cobra Codex and I did all of Sergeant Slaughter, both of which are really corner cases, because Sergeant Slaughter had a tight turnaround time because the license was limited amount of time. They wanted it on the shelf as long as possible. So that one I spent a lot of time working on. That one was one of my sleepless nights products. And Cobra Codex, I screwed up really badly on, in that I was supposed to turn over 100,000 words, and I turned over 50,000 words and totally missed that I was halfway to my deadline, it felt like a book's worth of content. And for whatever reason, I didn't have an Excel spreadsheet like I normally would. And I didn't even do, like, after I compiled it, I didn't do a word count check, which is totally not like me. And if it wasn't for the fact that they then had me on like 2-3 more products that I really just absolutely nailed before anyone realized this problem with the Cobra Codex, I probably would have never worked for Renegade again. Like, that was a major screw up. That was a fireable offense. And so, yeah, I have no idea how long I worked on that, because then after they realized it, they called me in and I was like, I will do another 50,000 words. I know what I could put in this book. And I am so sorry. And luckily, like, it was supposed to be the second book in the schedule, but then Sergeant Slaughter to the rescue, because he took that slot. Yeah. And they had to bump it later. I suddenly had time to make up for my screw up.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
I am not, like, I am ashamed by it, but I'm not so ashamed that I won't put it out there to be like,
yeah, but you also did what you needed to do to rectify the situation. So it's not the end. You know, it could have been a hell of a lot worse. But no, that's awesome. Yeah. And again,
and we lucked out because I had done my original deadline for Cobra Codex was before the G.I. Joe book was published, and so because we got this delay, I got to see feedback to the original G.I. Joe book and apply that to make Cobra Codex better. Plus, by then we created that contact system I was talking about earlier, so that you had more mechanical interaction with characters. And so a bunch of the 50,000 words that I needed to fulfill was a bunch of contacts.
So at the end of the day, at least, you know, you could improve on things, and it can't turn out.
Never do it again, but that worked out.
Just do that every single time. Felipe asks, do Hasbro have any input on what should be developed, maybe due to some alignment with the main toy releases?
So maybe they would if I wasn't always working to fit stuff in as soon as possible. So we'll talk about it when we get to InterContinental Adventures. But as you'll see on the cover, actually, do you want to switch over to the cover now? This is a great time to show that.
Felipe's, there you go. Gosh, sorry, Felipe. Thank you for your question, bud. There you go.
So if you can see right behind Zartan, on one screen you've got Wolf Spider, on one screen you've got Glenda.
Yep.
Because Wolf Spider had just been announced while I was working on while I was working on the outline of it, and likewise, or actually, I think later on, the Dragonfly came out, and I had enough wiggle room that I was like, can we put this character in there? Because I don't know if technically the Hasbro version of Glenda is Argentinian, but the original figure was, so it fits the intercontinental, like the international theme.
She's either Argentinian or Irish based on the surname that she's got on the Argentinian file card.
That makes sense.
It's like something. The name's in the new figure, the classified release. I forget what it is now. Someone in the comments will probably be able to remind me. Yeah, but but likewise, I do think Argentinian makes the most sense.
With Wolf Spider, I lucked out that they decided to go with first name, code name, last name for his figure, so that we knew that he was of Indian descent. I actually only found out later he's actually Indian American, that it's parents that are actually from India. I thought maybe he was one of the like international Joes on the team. But like, we don't have file cards anywhere, so I know that because I've seen some internal Hasbro documents, but it's not contradicted by anything that's actually been published. So anyway, the fact that I got to rush this out as soon as I knew these characters existed, and I happened to be working on a book that they fit into thematically, was very exciting. And I try to do that as much as possible. I try, whenever something new comes out, to fit it in. Vipra was too late to fit into Python Patrol, but she's in InterContinental Adventures because because of the Arashikage connection. Although getting to the bottom of whether Vipra was the same, like the Courier from 1998, or the Vipra sisters from 2000.
Yeah, there's the multi-pack.
Like there's two different distinct characters that have the name Vipra, and here we had this new character that seemed like it was the individual, but she does have the Arashikage logo on her quiver. So in talking with Hasbro, it was like, so which of these isn't? And they're like, well, here's her file cards, and it was both. And it's like, all right,
it's merged together.
We'll just figure it out.
By the way, Glenda's name is Jane Mulligan, and I believe the background actually was quite interesting because someone messaged or commented at the time when she was revealed to say that there's there was a big influx of Irish and a couple of other different like kind of groups that influxed into Argentina around that time. Well, sorry, a lot earlier than that. Sorry, a lot earlier than that, back in the day, and so you'll find a lot of these names in Argentina. So I think Argentinian is the one we can land on with Glenda on that one.
Weirdly enough, I was looking up something about that because Lance McCade is that's Lance's last name in Voltron Legendary Defender, and I run the Voltron social media accounts.
Yeah.
Yesterday was his birthday, and so I posted it, and someone was like, "Isn't he canonically Cuban? Why is his last name so Scottish?" And so I did a little research before I answered that person, and I came across why Shaquille's last name is O'Neill, and how when the Irish that were brought over for indentured servitude started to spread out, they had a lot more rights than the people that were brought over as slaves, and so they could show up and then they could leave the poor conditions that they were working in, go to countries where they had a little more freedom, and that's why there's Irish last names spread over all kinds of different cultures that you wouldn't expect them to be.
Yeah, totally. I just want to see if there's any more questions for you. There's a few. David says, "Thank you for using Bongo the Balloon Bear and her van."
Did we use Bongo the Balloon Bear?
Apparently so.
All right.
Maltese Falcon says, given that they've done Transformers before, do they have the ability to do crossovers?
Do we? So we're going to talk about a book later that is all about how you do crossovers. But yeah, absolutely. So not only have we got one source book that is dedicated to crossing over Power Rangers, G.I. Joe, and Transformers, and like just telling you mechanically how to do it, how to tell stories, like the mix and matches. But we've also put out some adventures that are crossovers. In fact, is it? Okay, good. Yeah, we did this one last year, was for Free RPG Day, and it introduces a new character, a Transformer called Fusion, that is the Megatron Hiss Tank. But it's in the story because a Megatron Hiss Tank would be like the highest threat level villain in the game. So this is a clone body that Megatron had Cobra build just in case he ever needs to transfer his consciousness into a new body. That's how we justified that this is like a lesser version of Megatron that looks exactly like the Hiss Tank Megatron. But yeah, because Hiss Tank Megatron,
that is a great way of explaining another Megatron kind of alt mode. That's incredible.
Well, and his name is Fusion, named after his fusion cannon, and he's a fusion of G.I. Joe and Transformers.
Absolutely genius. You should be a writer. Pass said, can you write the next
We've also got the
please?
Striker Bumblebee in the adventure.
Oh, that's pretty sexy as well. Pass says, can you write the next movie, please?
I have ideas if I ever did actually get asked, but that's just not the kind of thing. It's not. They don't go to RPG writers to write a lot of movies.
Felipe has said, put Downtown on a cover, and I grant you will sell at least one more book.
So, honestly, that's actually one area that we have not done a whole lot of work in. That 88 to 91, where like, let's say 88 to 91, where it's like they were putting out so many more characters. So many of them are original characters. They hadn't quite got to that 90s era where they were like, let's just remake the characters that people remember.
Yeah.
Because like G.I. Joe was around long enough that people got nostalgic for the early days of G.I. Joe.
Right.
And so like, that's just a big chunk of characters that I don't know what to do with.
It does feel like when I look at some of those characters like Backblast, Downtown, just as examples, they strike me as in the development process, I could imagine they were going, here's version 2 Bazooka, or Zap, for example, with Backblast, here's version 2 Short Fuse. But they decided that, let's just make it a completely different character instead. And Downtown is given the name sort of thing, What
I find fascinating is that when Deke took over the license, you figured that would be their chance to do all the original characters. But it's like Deke even recognized that you have to have Cobra Commander. You have to have Destro as a sidekick, even though the Toy Line storyline was that they were now separated. Yeah. And it brought in like all the female characters that were like as iconic as a lot of the male characters, even though they didn't have figures on the shelf at the time.
Right.
And I think that's why within a couple of years, Hasbro started leaning back into their more familiar characters, because even Deke was saying, we've got the license, we'll do your things, but our entire first story arc is going to be familiar characters. It's going to be Slaughter's Marauders, and we'll slip in Scope as the one new guy, while there's 20 new characters on the shelf that have no media representation.
Right, totally. Brother Malachi says, since you added the reservist member trait to the RPG, does that mean I could be a Cobra La native that joined the Mega Monsters, Arashikage, and the Dreadnoks?
All right. So there's a lot of mechanics at play right here. Doesn't the reservist only give you 2 factions that you have access to? I think you would have to pick 2 of those 3 things. Sorry, Cobra La, you can have your origin, Citizen of Cobra La.
Native,
and then your factions could be Arashikage and Dreadnought. All right. Mechanically, it works. Now tell me your character.
Ryan, will you be at QuestCon in Orlando in September? So asked David.
So I will not, unfortunately. So as I talked about, I have a full-time job and I have all this freelancing and I have a family. I have, 2 daughters and a wife, and, we want to do things like go to Disney World and spend time together at Christmas, which means that my free time to go to cons is usually spent writing the games, doing stuff with family, occasionally actually playing these games. And it's hard for me to make con appearances. Like I'd love to get to a Joe Fest. I've never been. I haven't been to a G.I. Joe convention since the Canadian ones and the New Orleans one. Actually, the Canadian ones are coming back. I don't know if you've seen that announcement. So
no,
that's something that we'll have to talk about off screen because it's too far afield of this conversation. It's already gone on for an hour and we're not even halfway through our outline.
Not a problem.
But yeah, just to go back, that I don't make as many con appearances as I would like to. I just can't.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Will you ever stat out Coils O'Doom and Crimson Asp?
Coils O'Doom? What's Coils O'Doom?
Coils O'Doom was the club figure from close to the end of their run. He was on in the final 12 kind of reveals. It's Coils O'Doom and it was the G.I. Joe 60s sort of vibe.
Oh, okay. That I don't know where it fits with our license because it's outside of the Real American Hero Evergreen.
That's true, actually, yeah. Because if it's club stuff, like club, what do you call it? If they created it, does that cause an issue? Because it was licensed.
We've used some club stuff before without issue. Like in the Sergeant Slaughter pack, Overlord's minions are the coil, and it's the club version of the coil.
There you go.
Because the club had made that connection. But anyway, so will we ever stat them out? If we come across a book that they fit in perfectly thematically and we have the space for them, yeah, they might end up in there. But I'm not rushing to stat out either of them.
Brother Malachi said, where can we find the old Free Comics Book Day module that was a G.I. Joe Transformers crossover?
So that it was free RPG Day, not free. I misspoke. You can find some on the Renegade website, so renegadestudios.com.
Okay, cool.
Renegade
link in
Game
the description
Studios.
In that case. Yeah, link in the description.
Yeah, I'll find you a link later. They're not free anymore. You have to pay for them, but yeah, you can still buy them. Oh,
wicked. Brilliant. I'm sorry, there's so many. We're just going to keep moving at the moment. Yeah. Pass has asked, would unproduced items ever get some love in the books? Insecticycle #. Is that like if it's part of the Hasbro sort of?
Yeah. So in the core rulebook, we do have one homage character to Raw Beef, the Cobra Spider Wrangler. We have him, a character named Beef, and Raw is his robot arachnid wrangler. Like he's got a drone that helps him manipulate spiders. So we were allowed to use that. And I used that character specifically so that I could have a sidebar saying, some people are arachnophobic, so you can replace the spiders with snakes or some other thing. And also so that I could say like, hey, here's a deep cut that we worked into it, but you could replace it with whatever part of the G.I. Joe fandom speaks to you the most.
Totally. Awesome. Right, we'll keep moving then. And one thing I want to say is I love this cover. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
Who did the art for this one?
Oh, shoot. I have that written down. Give me a second. Oh, yeah. There we go. Kiki Mock Rizki.
Yeah, it's lovely.
I love it's their first cover for us, but yeah, it covers all the 3 chapters of the book. It's got... I had actually asked for a Storm Shadow version 2, but that's the 3.0.
I know.
Storm Shadow alternate look.
I was going to say that's the 3.0 Storm Shadow, and I was like, no, that is even deeper. It's like, you could have anything on there, and they just give you something different and fresh each time.
Yeah, exactly. Now, had it been just a flat-out Cobra version of Storm Shadow, I would have asked for them to revise it. But that one, because it's got no Cobra logo on it, I think it was technically sold as a Cobra version of Storm Shadow, but it reads as a Storm Shadow, as whatever Storm Shadow you want. I bought that one because I thought of it as a version 2 homage. And I love version 2 Storm Shadow, which is my favorite figure from the whole line.
Samesies.
Yeah. So yeah, he's taken out Zartan, who was completely caught off guard by this. And behind him, you can see readouts about the October Guard and 3 of the International Joes from the last chapter in the book.
Yeah, backstop in there as well.
My boy, right in the middle.
There he is. Now, but is it as good as this one?
So that is the original one. The one thing that I will say that this one does that the official one doesn't is that Zartan is hiding behind the globe, and that's a metaphor for Zartan will do anything to protect himself. Like, there is nothing in the world that Zartan values more than his own life. But other than that little metaphor that I worked into my version of the art when I was trying to do the breakdown for it, I think every change they made was an improvement.
You think? I don't know. I think it's pretty good. It made me chuckle when you sent me this and said, "This is my sketch." I was like, "That's brilliant." This is technically, you won't see this in an official channel here, guys. Unfortunately, you won't see this on a cover. Could you imagine if this came out like an alternate variant cover for that?
So, as honored as I would be as the cover artist, I don't want to get into variant covers on these books. I understand the collectible appeal of them. But I'd rather let's just put the good art on the cover and sell that.
Amazing. I'm going to make you a special version of that book by putting that on the front of it.
Thank you.
Anyway, phenomenal stuff. Now, moving through, we get this is beautiful. This is the duality of Storm Shadow. I love this.
Exactly. So in the Arashikage chapter, I guess I'll take a step back. This is Factions of Action Volume 2.
Exclusive art.
Yeah. People have not seen this before, but we got permission to share it during this interview, which is really exciting. So the book is InterContinental Adventures, and it is about the international factions. So Australia's Dreadnoks, the Japanese Arashikage, and the Warsaw Pact, so the Eastern October Guard, as well as characters that are like on foreign exchange with G.I. Joe, and characters on Cobra that are established to be from other areas of the world that aren't also associated with a faction that we might explore in a later faction in action book. So this is from the Arashikage chapter, which frankly is the Storm Shadow chapter. I personally think Storm Shadow is the third most important character in all of the G.I. Joe mythos.
Yeah.
And he was cut from the core rulebook. He is the only major recognizable Cobra character that was cut before it went to print. And part of that was just disagreements with the cultural consultant. So one thing that we did when we were devising this book is that we hired Jeremy Blum to write this chapter. Jeremy Blum is a cultural consultant. So we want to start off with a cultural consultant's point of view. He is also an excellent game designer, a published author, and a fan of G.I. Joe, and was very good at researching different aspects of the Arashikage that even I didn't know. I didn't know Storm Shadow was from California. I thought he was born in Japan. And I always wondered why he was in the American unit with Stalker and and Snake Eyes.
Yeah.
But no, it ends up he is a Californian. And so a change that a cultural consultant suggested in Cobra Codex, which was to put his Arashikage Tommy, to have his name in that order, which is more traditional for the Japanese, for people from Japan, was not actually an accurate suggestion because he's Californian, and it would have more likely been the way we always know it as Tommy Arashikage.
Right.
So because Storm Shadow has up until now not been statted out, we did two different versions of Storm Shadow for this. One of them is Storm Shadow Cobra Agent. One of them is Storm Shadow G.I. Joe Ally. And they tell two different stories. So Cobra Agent Storm Shadow is a sword fighter because, his card art has him primarily with the swords out, whereas version 2 has the bow out. So he's the bow fighter. And the story that's written is that he became the young master because of his bow skills, which is canonical to the comic. But the twist we added is that after the Hardmaster was assassinated by a bow and Storm Shadow was blamed, he became like he was phobic of the bow, that he could not use it to the same degree. And that's why he started favoring the swords when he was with Cobra. And he didn't want to be at his most effective. He wanted to do the job that he was there to do while he was actually secretly investigating or even openly investigating the assassination. And then once he was free of Cobra and became a G.I. Joe ally, now he became an archer again. So technically it just means that if you want a Storm Shadow build that uses swords or a bow, you've got either option. And there's nothing about the stat block that says this has to be the G.I. Joe one. That's just all in the flavor. But we use the flavor to tell the Storm Shadow story, which I think is a super interesting story. And I kind of resent whenever Storm Shadow was brought back as a Cobra agent just because he's more famous to be a Cobra character. And so I just want to say this is why Storm Shadow version 2 is my favorite character, because it's a toy that tells a story. This is the story that toy tells. And now here it is. The role-playing game is also telling that story.
Awesome. That's amazing. And again, thank you very much for letting us kind of reveal this art for the first time. I'm also a very big fan of Storm Shadow version 2. So yeah, very happy to. I'm very accepting of this particular honor. So thank you very much for that. And again, I love that idea. I love the idea of having that kind of flexibility as well, and in the story kind of telling and all that kind of stuff. It's really, really cool. Yeah, awesome stuff. So as well as Storm Shadow,
yes,
we'll keep moving on. This is also exclusive, exclusive artwork, guys. And this is a very cool sort of homage of that. Is it Dreadnoks Declassified cover from back in the day?
Yeah,
like
which heavily influenced this chapter. So the Dreadnoks chapter, one thing that we did in the core rulebook is that we just did generic versions of Dreadnoks. So we've got the Dreadheads, and we've got characters that you could clearly see if you want Buzzer in your story, use this stat block. But it's not Buzzer in name. It's just Dreadnok, not Enforcer. Anyway, we gave it some generic name because if we were to actually go into every single Dreadnok character in the core rulebook, there would have been as many Dreadnoks as there were Cobras.
Right.
So we saved them for now. We have this opportunity to fully explore the Dreadnoks. And so we've got stat blocks for Buzzer, Ripper, and Torch for the first time, as well as we got Heartwrencher in there. We've got Burnout. Zanya made the cut. We've got Nagahide. We did not get Nagahide's monkey in time, unfortunately.
Oh, because that wasn't revealed at that point, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It was. Oh, let me tell you a story. So you remember the Nox being misspelt on Torch's backpack?
Yes.
And you had mentioned that you had talked to the designers and that there was a reason for it, but you didn't go into what the reason was.
Correct. Yes.
We had sent the book to print at that point, and I was like, Ben, Ben, my producer, they might be renaming the Dreadnoks. I'm not sure what's going on. We might have to change the spelling of Dreadnok everywhere in this Dreadnok book we just sent to the printer. But no, it ends up it was just the joke was Torch is illiterate and he accidentally misspelled this bad word.
I'm so sorry.
It wasn't you.
Holding off
more than you.
Me holding off on that explanation made you guys, bumholes twinge a little bit. My apologies on that one. That was just because I wanted, Lenny wanted to kind of say himself on the live stream, and I was like, okay, cool, no worries, mate. I'll hold off on that bit of information. I didn't realize.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh, that's what that was.
That's genius. Thanks, man. That is so funny. But yeah, it just turned out that he's illiterate and can't spell himself. That's brilliant. I also noticed on that cover you've got the Dreadnok cycle as well.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
So we've got stats for 6 different Dreadnok vehicles.
Nice.
Doom
Can I see if I can guess them?
Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
So it's Thunder Machine?
Absolutely.
Okay. The cycle, obviously. I'm pretty sure that's in there. Would Zartan Swamp Skier be?
Zartan, the Chameleon Swamp Skier is in there.
Okay. What about the Swamp Fire?
Swamp Fire is in there.
Ground
I think I even have a reference to it smelling like vanilla.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because the toy, the color-changing toy actually smelled putrid, and so they added vanilla to the plastic.
Exactly. I mean, it's stuff like that's crazy, man. That is so deep. That's the deepest cut so far, I think.
It is definitely one of the deepest.
I can't think of a deeper one than that off the top of my head right now, but I'm sure we'll get into it. Ground Assault?
No, Ground Assault is not in it. Good guess, though.
Air Assault?
None of the assaults are in there.
So it's got to be Zanzibar's.
It is Zanzibar's air skiff.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So I just named all of the Dreadnok vehicles.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. And again, I love the kind of the fact. I mean, it makes sense that you've done something specific for the Dreadnoks, and you get into more detail, more depth that way. It totally makes sense. I love that.
Yeah, one of the challenges though was that we did have a lot of Dreadnok related options in Cobra Codex, and so we had to find new ways to fill the chapter with something other than just stat blocks, because stat blocks are good for the game master, but as far as a player reading it, you want them to also have things to leaf through. So we found new vehicle combat rules, so you can do things like boarding a vehicle and playing chicken, like things that are classic motorcycle gang type stuff. Yeah. So that, and then because we introduced those ideas, they inspired other options that helped flesh out the chapter.
Do you have any kind of like specific rules or anything like that for adding Dreadnok characters into the campaign?
So not rules, but yeah, we have advice. Okay. Every chapter ends with so Dreadnoks in your campaign is the last section of the Dreadnought chapter, and it's talking about here's how you would do an entirely Dreadnought related campaign. Here's how you would do it if you want to do a Cobra campaign with Dreadnought PCs, and here is how you would use Dreadnoks as villains and NPCs in your G.I. Joe and Cobra campaigns.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. And I think that's pretty much it on the Nox.
Yeah, Nox is a fun chapter, but I think the sleeper chapter is going to be the next one, the October Guard.
Yeah, which is the October Guard. And here is, how do you pronounce it? Shraj?
I say Shraj, yeah.
I said Shraj earlier, and it did raise an eyebrow, and I've just realized I say it differently every single time I say it. So, Skraj here.
The reason that I wanted to preview this chapter was written by Travis Woodall. I was more than happy to give the entire October Guard chapter to a freelancer because I have no love for the October Guard. I know some people really love them. I get their importance and the nuance of them sometimes being allies and sometimes being enemies.
Yeah.
But that's it. I just respect them. I don't really go I like their place in G.I. Joe, but I'm not in love with them.
Yeah.
And so as far as I'm concerned, the October Guard, has always been like 3 or 4 characters you can identify, and then half the unit is just guys in brown outfits. And Shraj is one of those. And so I love what Travis did here, where he just classified. This is actually how it's printed in the book. Right. He classified half of his biography.
Amazing.
Which suddenly makes him one of the most interesting members of the October Guard. Because now he's this mysterious, angry guy in the background.
I love that. That's, it's really good idea. And also, I'm sure this wasn't part of the thought process, but does save you a lot of work at the end of the day, doesn't it? When you kind of go, we can make this really mysterious by just going like this. And that way, I don't have to commit to anything necessarily.
I'm trying to remember if he actually did write a bio and then just blacked out certain parts, or if it just says like
I bet he
classified
did
underneath.
I bet he did write the whole thing out and then go, right, let's redact that. That would make more sense as well. And it would feel more natural doing that as well, I think, wouldn't it? That's really cool though. That's really fun.
So we've got stat blocks for 8 named October Guard members. We've also got generic October Guard troopers, so that if they are your main antagonist, you'll be fighting just October Guard troopers of different types. We've got an October Guard bear, like an official member named Ursula, I believe. And some vehicles and whatnot. One fun thing we did is that we made Big Bear and Red Star contacts instead of threats.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, because those are the ones that are more officially associated with G.I. Joe. Possibly they're G.I. Joe members, depending on how you read the lore.
Yeah, and the toys as well. I mean, they showed up in the toy.
So the ones that are toys are contacts. The ones that are just straight up from comics and cartoon are the ones that are stat blocks as threats.
Yeah.
But the reason that I said I think this is going to be the sleeper chapter is that we realized that because the October Guard are the Warsaw Pact equivalent of G.I. Joe, and we can just do a bunch of options that are good for G.I. Joe characters and fill them in here. So if you're reading this and you don't specifically want a biker and you don't specifically want a martial artist, this is the chapter for you, because this is just your military character chapter.
Absolutely. Cool. And in a similar kind of way, any advice? I mean, it's probably the same as the last one, isn't it? The situation with the Dreadnoks being incorporated into the campaign, the Cobra campaign. It's the same can be done here for the October Guard. Exactly.
The October Guard gets a little extra space just because you also have to realize that, this is most tied to real world politics, unlike an Australian biker gang or an ancient ninja clan. And so just some things that you have to be aware of, some real world, both the sensitivity of things like the war in Ukraine and the fact that they were originally a Soviet group. And the Soviet Union no longer exists. So now they're a Warsaw Pact group. And you kind of have to move them along with the timeline. Unless you're going to set this in the 80s, then you can go back to how they were originally presented. Oh, also the fact that half of the members are canonically dead. What do you do with that? And so I believe we touch on that in there somewhere too.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, moving on from October Guard, we have this beautiful piece. Now, this is still part of the obviously the Intercontinental Tag Team Championship, but I like calling it that because of Intercontinental.
I will tell you, the original title I proposed was International Action Force, and they were like, "Oh, but this other company, Valaverse, owns the name Action Force. We probably shouldn't name that." And it's like we probably could have got away with it, but it makes sense why we stay away from it.
Totally. No, that makes a lot of sense. And here we have them all checking out Zartan.
Yeah, so this was an alternate proposal for the cover. I basically said, here's two ideas. One of them should be the cover, and one of them should be Chapter 5, A World of Adventure, because the theme of Chapter 5 is also the theme of the whole book.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so it's the familiar characters from the cover. We've actually got Storm Shadow in his version 2 look here. And yeah, you can clearly see they're in like some kind of a Arashikage conference room. He's meeting with the October Guard. He's meeting with the Joes, and they have to deal with this Dreadnought threat. And all the files there, you can see there are, when you get a closer look at the image, there are pictures of the Dreadnoughts on them and stuff. So you can see It's clearly a debriefing. This basically got the same amount of attention as a cover would have because it's such an elaborate piece.
Yeah.
And it just happens to be a chapter header.
Love it. Love the fact you got Wolf Spider in there, backstop Glenda again. Like it's awesome. It kind of you're piecing together that cover in a sense, aren't you? Like there's a storyline already built in just those two images, which is pretty impressive. I love that a lot. Really nice stuff. And the artist for this, who's the artist?
Good question. Who's the artist for this piece? So the way the credits are laid out, it's cover artist and then interior artists. And so I don't know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't actually know who the artist of this one is.
It's bloody good though. I really do like Storm Shadow in this shot, pointing up. That's just really cool, and I just love seeing that costume all day long. Brilliant stuff. Awesome. So next we have Gen Con. Let's talk Gen Con.
All right. So Gen Con is, first of all, where that book that we were just talking about, InterContinental Adventures, we're doing an early release of certain copies. So we weren't able to get the entire print run done in time for an official Gen Con release. So it is an October release officially, but if you're going to Gen Con, which is North America's biggest gaming convention, and it is happening this weekend, there will be some copies of InterContinental Adventures that will be available for purchase at the Renegade booth.
Fantastic. Anyone in the chat going to Gen Con? Actually, that would be nice to know if you are going. And if you are, see if you can pick up that blooming book, because it looks awesome. A Worlds Collide storyline going on here. So
you'll remember last year we did Worlds Collide, Battle for the Multiverse, and we had Lord Mindwaves, which was the combination of Lord Zed, Dr. Mindbender, and Shockwave.
Yeah.
Which I remember Pat's reaction was just like, no. Just because you could doesn't mean you should. But yeah, the idea is that it is a multi-table mega event crossing over all of the different properties that we had at the time. So My Little Pony was just released at last Gen Con, so it wasn't included in the adventure. But the idea was that people from all these different worlds were showing up at this one cross-dimensional, what did we call it? Anyway, like a pocket dimension, I think we called it.
Yeah.
Where because Lord Zed was messing with teleportation magic at the same time as Shockwave was testing Skywarp. The Skywarp's the one that teleports, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Skywalk, so he was trying to reverse engineer his teleportation powers while Dr. Mindbender was working on the mass device. Somehow there was like this cross-dimensional conversion that created a pocket dimension, merged these three characters together, and sucked in a bunch of G.I. Joes, Transformers, and Power Rangers, which were the player characters. So even though it was a crossover adventure, everyone was playing a single setting character.
Yeah.
Here we've got Worlds Collide, the Pony Puzzle, which brings My Little Pony into the mix and introduces crossover characters. And so you can play a My Little Pony G.I. Joe. You can play a My Little Pony Transformer. You can play a Transformer Power Ranger. I can tell you that one of the pre-generated characters you can play if you don't want to build your own is Sergeant Trotter. It is an Earth Pony drill instructor.
Fantastic.
And we also have literal King Arthur is in there because Excalibur is in Quartermaster's Guide to Gear since it was in the animated series.
Yes.
But we've also got a whole Power Rangers book based on time travel. So it's like, why not? We've got the stats for Excalibur. Let's just build an actual medieval knight King Arthur, put him in this adventure right next to Sergeant Slaughter as a pony, and all of these other mix and match characters that we've put together.
This is definitely where you can get a little bit like tongue-in-cheek, a little bit quirky, fun, just go absolutely nuts and really just enjoy that sandbox of all these characters, isn't it, really?
Yeah, exactly. And so last time we only had the one crossover character that you're interacting with, but in this case, you're interacting with a whole bunch of characters that are mashed up with ponies, and you're just trying to figure out what is happening. Why are we all here on Equestria? And why is Equestria being influenced by the world of G.I. Joe, the world of Transformers, and the world of Power Rangers? And
amazing.
Yeah, I unfortunately will not be running this event, but the way these multi-table events work, like most role-playing games, it's one game master and a table of 5 to 7 players. But then these also have a master of ceremonies. So every now and then, master of ceremonies makes a big announcement, and that affects every table in the room. And then they go ahead and they do their individual thing. So at one point, you'll all be solving puzzles, and if like there's like 8 puzzles to solve, and if one table solves it, that counts as solved for the whole room, and that might unlock an area that you can go to. Like Cantacarpathia is one of the areas that you can travel to. Yeah. There's a lot of different mashup names like that. I'm not going to reveal them all because that's part of the fun.
Enough.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also some of the mashup names are answers to the puzzles, so I just cannot reveal some of the better mashup names that we've got in there. But yeah, it's if you are just big into My Little Pony, if you're big into SN20, if you're big into any of these brands, this will be a really memorable event for you. The last year, the feedback was basically like, nobody has ever played a game like that. That was amazing.
That's great. That's so much fun. And all I can think of is a real equestrian hero in my head now in terms of puns. That's all I can really think of. Lightfoot should work in some way, shape, or like
just Lightfoot.
Just Lightfoot.
Lighthoof.
Lighthoof. Oh my goodness. Yes. Okay, I'm keeping that one. Thanks. Amazing stuff. And here, of course, is the crossover source book.
Yes. So each of the books was written using the same system, but like we decided every setting really needed to have their rule book just cater that one setting. We needed to be aware that you can cross over stuff, but we didn't want it to be too much like we didn't want to say, oh, G.I. Joe can only go up to threat level 10, because after threat level 10 is when you should be dealing with like big robots and stuff. So no, instead we figured out a way that how all of the universe is balanced within their own setting. And it was something in like the advertising that these were all cross-compatible, but no one source book said it was cross-compatible or even acknowledged that there was the Power Rangers, Transformers, and G.I. Joe were all the same system until this book came out. This book specifically was the way to blend all 3 systems together. And it says, like, if you want to play a Power Ranger who joins G.I. Joe, here is how you take this chunk out of the roll, add it to this chunk, and that becomes a military version of a Power Ranger.
Yeah.
Actually, one of my favorite parts in the book is that we do a step-by-step of creating a crossover character. And the crossover character we're making is Captain Gridiron, because it's Captain from G.I. Joe, Grid, the Power Rangers are the heroes of the grid, the Morphin Grid, and Iron, because the Transformers are made of metal. And so Captain Gridiron became the perfect like crossover character, and he's a sports car who was like a security vehicle at a sporting event and became obsessed with American football.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that is amazing. And a great way to drop Captain Gridiron in as well. That's phenomenal.
Far too often, I just do the things in these books that amuse me and just hope that it resonates.
Well, it has done so far, absolutely. Cool. And again, this is G.I. Joe, Power Rangers, and Transformers.
Yeah, and the reason we're bringing it up is because at Gen Con, there's an industry award show called the Ennies that's hosted by EN World, which is where the Ennies name comes from. That's usually the first name. The first question people have is like, what is the Ennies? Because it's EN World mixed with the Emmys. So yeah, it's one of the only award shows for the tabletop role-playing game industry. And it's a bunch of categories that are decided on by the judges and then voted on by the public. But after they decide all the categories, each judge gets to look at everything that was nominated, pick a book that was not nominated, and call it a judge's spotlight. So it's basically, this book didn't make the cut for any one categories, but is too cool not to acknowledge.
Right.
And the Field Guide to Action Adventure won a judge's spotlight. One of the judges was just like, this is something that we really need to put a little spotlight on. So yeah, that's super cool that this book already has already won the award even before the Ennies has been announced. Awesome. And I'm glad. Like, I think this is a very special book, and this is a book that this is the first time that I was a project manager on a book.
Yeah,
I had a very specific vision for how to execute this book, and so I took on extra work. I had a lot of sleepless nights making sure this one got right, and I'm very proud of the product that came out of it.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, it looks great. It looks fantastic. And yeah, it sounds like fun. Again, like a little bit of, again, you can get a little quirky with it. You can get a little, again, playing in multiple sandboxes technically here. But yeah, that's really cool. And finally, we've got this beauty to finish on.
So when I was done writing the G.I. Joe role-playing game core rulebook, Renegade said, is there anything else you'd like to work on? Like, each core rulebook had its own team, but then they were more open to like someone on the G.I. Joe team working on the Transformers book, etc. And so they were like, you know what's coming up in the pipeline. What would you like to work on next? And I was like, the My Little Pony core rulebook. And they were like, really? You're our G.I. Joe guy. Your next book is My Little Pony? First of all, I'm also a My Little Pony guy. But I also I had a very specific idea for how we could do magic in Essence 20, and this would be our first opportunity to do that.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, so I wrote about 2/3 of this book, other than there's an adventure at the end, so I had nothing to do with that. So of the non-adventure part of this book, I wrote about 2/3 of it. I put as much love and care into it as I do with all the G.I. Joe products that I've been working on. And this one is also up for an Ennie. This one is up for the Best Family Game / Product Ennie Award. We haven't won this one yet. This one we'll only find out on Saturday night or Friday night when the Ennies come up, if I am now a 2-time Ennie Award.
Awesome. That's well, good luck on that one.
Thank you.
Fingers crossed, and I hope you do win that that Ennie. That's amazing. And yeah, I mean, I love all 80s properties more or less. So seeing that you know, in any fashion, whether you're a fan or not, it does bring up this nostalgia. And one thing I will say as well is I spoke to Buzz Dixon many moons ago, and he said this on interviews and stuff back in the day, but he actually had written in the My Little Pony film, he had written in G.I. Joe and Transformers crossing over, and in the scene for the G.I. Joe that got cut, it was going to be shipwreck drunk at the HQ, like drinking a can of beer, laying on the couch, when one of the My Little Ponies would fly through the window and speak to him, and he'd be like, look at the can and like throw the drink away and said, I'm never drinking again. And that got cut out, which always blows my mind. And I was
unforgivable. That got
I know cut. Exactly. It should have stayed in forever. That would have been perfect. But anyway, yeah, that's awesome, man.
Has that been storyboarded? Has anyone seen any evidence besides the words on a page?
He just wrote it, and he was told it was never storyboarded. He said that it was usually he could pretty much get away with most things, and that one literally hit a brick wall, and they're like, we can't do this. I'm sorry, we can't do it.
Because there's no joke without it implying that a shipwreck is drinking alcohol.
Of course.
And that just does not fit into My Little Pony. I get why it was cut, but it's still a shame.
Exactly. That'd have been amazing, wouldn't it? Like, just what like, that would have gone down as like a meme-worthy kind of like clip that would have just continued. That would have taken over Knowing Is Half the Battle. Is I'm never drinking again, is what would have been said instead. G.I. Joe, I'm never drinking again. Amazing. Awesome stuff. Right. That's everything, Ryan. We've covered everything. And we're going to finish on this image of My Little Pony in the background as well.
Sure, why not?
Amazing. Dude, thank you so much for jumping on and chatting with me.
Thank you. I love it.
Where can everyone find you? I've got links in the description to back things up, but yeah, let everyone know where they can check your work out.
Yeah, so if you're looking for my work, you want to go to Renegade Game Studios, where you can find the full list of Essence 20 products, which at this point is 4 different game settings, and so each one has been supported, and therefore there are a lot of books that you can choose from.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. There's actually a few free things up there, including there's a Storm Shadow pre-generated character. So it has some previews of some of the options that are coming out in InterContinental Adventures.
Cool.
So yeah, that's where you go for my products. If you want to see just my own personal output, you can go to nodirectionpodcast.com, where we've got it's a podcast network full of other TTRPG related podcasts and blogs. Most of them are Pathfinder and Starfinder related, but I also have an Essence 20 blog up there called Essential Builds. I'll take a pop culture character and I will put it through the ringer. I will make complex Essence 20 builds just to show like this is how you can make these characters. Built Batman, I've built the Rocketeer, I built what's the zaniest one? I built Dracula, but the Dracula from the monster for the monkey fiction. You know that there's that Monster Force thing that's coming out.
Monster Force, yeah. Fresh Monkey Fictions, Crimson Moon.
Yes.
Is it Crimson Moon? Yeah, I want to say, yeah. That's cool.
Yeah,
Monster
so I've
Force,
built a
though,
bunch of
isn't it?
zany things just to kind of. I don't know if you've seen, somebody took a Lego set that was supposed to be a unicorn and they turned it into a Millennium Falcon.
Wow.
So I built that as a unicorn to Millennium Falcon transformer.
That's amazing. That's impressive. That's one hell of a Beast Wars transformation, that, isn't it?
There's not enough unicorn transformers.
No, there aren't any, are there? Have there been any?
No, not first part. Oh no, sorry. I think there's one.
I know there's
he's fairly obscure.
I know there's My Little Pony kind of decos that have got Prime and Starscream and stuff kind of
He's
on.
up there on the shelf. I can't.
Right there, literally right there.
My Little Prime.
Amazing. That's awesome, man. Dude, thank you so much for jumping on. Like I said, all links in the description for all of those different places as well to kind of get hold of you. It's been a pleasure, mate. We'll have to have you back on again next time when, whenever there's like a new thing that's been revealed. There is a virtual con coming up at the end of this year, right? Or October?
October, I believe. Yeah.
Wicked. We'll have you back on then, and we can talk when that's revealed. You can kind of give us some little bits of insight and maybe even some exclusive artwork to show off as well. Maybe.
There's some stuff that you're going to want to talk about.
Oh, of course, I know. I can't wait.
No,
I know.
You can suspect, but I know.
The Renegade virtual cons, and I always tune in to check out the little G.I. Joe segments and everything, and I really enjoy them, and I like reporting on them afterwards because it's like we can talk about they've done the little painting session or the new reveals and stuff like that. So I'm really into it and I really enjoy it. So we'll definitely get you on here again and talk about new stuff coming in October. That's going to be awesome. Right. Okay. Well, that's it. Thanks everyone in the chat as well for all your questions and all helping out. I appreciate it. Now remember to stay fresh, cheese bags, and I think you know what to do. You've seen enough of these episodes, Ryan. I should imagine.
Ready for the countdown.
After 3, 1, 2, 3.
Full force.
Brilliant. Laters.
That's it for this instalment of the Full Force News Burst. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe. See you next time, and as always, Full Force. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on X, formerly Twitter, @The Full Force, liking the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Full Force. We've also added a brand new Instagram, so check us out there as well @The Full Force Podcast, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on any of those platforms with feedback and questions. We also have a Patreon page, so if you want to show your support for the show, see your name up in lights on these videos, or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/The Full Force Podcast, or click on the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force.